It's the last trading day of the month of May, and analysts at ARM believe this was a stellar month for the Nigerian equities market. Calista Chileke, the investment research analyst at ARM, says the late month rally, underpinned by monetary policy clarity and sector-specific catalysts, reinforced investors' confidence in the market's near-term direction. She joins me now live in our Lagos studio for more on the month's highlights and what to expect in June. Calista, thanks a lot for joining us on the show today. Quite an interesting month May was, really. Walk us through the first 3 weeks. We had some sharp changes in between, and then how the monetary policy direction and also the sector-specific catalysts you talked about reintroduced a fresh twist.
All right, so beginning of the month, we saw a lot of, coming into the earnings season. Yeah. We saw a lot of buying interest, positive momentum in the equities market, particularly in the consumer goods sector. So a lot of tickers rallied in that space. Nigerian breweries for one. We saw NASCON as well climbing up because a lot of them, rebounded from their losses that they recorded, the previous year. So we also saw that a lot of, trading activities in the first 3 weeks as well. And we also saw that towards the MPC meeting, the whole decision by the committee also gave some clarity to investors. Yeah. And we saw that, that helped.
Was that a surprise for you?
No, it was not. It was not a surprise. We expected it. Yes. So, and I think a lot of investors expected it as well because we saw, activities used in the fixed income market, started to trend downward because they saw, downward trend in inflation as well. So they were pricing it already. So a lot of people expected the whole decision. Yes.
No, and your market also highlights this 70 trillion naira plus market capitalization at this time, and we've definitely had questions as to whether or not or how quickly we would see the market get back to that 100 trillion naira market capitalization. With the movements in May, how do you think things might likely shape up for the month of June?
Oh, for June, we're seeing, positive sentiment, to be sustained because investors are going to be positioning ahead of the release of, half-year results. Yeah. And we're seeing dividend announcements as well. So
exciting numbers.
Of course. So dividend payments occurred as well, and we can see those funds, get back into the market, as investors pull those funds, back into the market to reinvest those funds. So yeah, so June 2025 is something to be positive about.
And do you still see consumer goods still leading the chart as well when we're looking at sectoral performances? Because we also saw the sector lead about 2.6% month-to-date growth within the month. You take around how things might shape up, especially when we're looking at the banking segment and also insurance.
So for the consumer goods sector, everybody is excited about the turnaround that we're seeing in that space because when we look at where they are coming from 2023, 2024, the FX losses that they had, and where they are currently in Q1 2025, we can see how, how significant that turnaround and their profits have been. And we've seen rallies in a lot of them, Nestle for one, Nigerian breweries, NASCON, Cadbury even, and Honeyfla. So that is, a good one for the consumer goods sector. And then going forward, yes, I think that the, relative exchange rate stability that we're seeing currently in the macroeconomic environment, poses some sort of benefits from them, and it could help to, improve their performance going forward. But the downside to that could be, tightened consumer wallet and, the usual. So, but of course, we think their performance would, be sustained.
And you didn't talk about the banking sector. That still remains a darling.
Yeah, for the banking sector, of course, dividend announcements, helped their performance in May 2025. And we see that going forward, the interest rate environment is still relatively high for them. That could help to boost their net interest margin. But on the downside, we're seeing yields in the fixed income market, decline, and that could have an impact on their non-interest income. And we're already seeing that we're already seeing that coming to play in their Q1 2025 earnings result. Their non-interest income was not as high as it used to be because of the yield environment. So that's what we expect.
And when we also look at the oil and gas sector now, we also saw that struggle due to the sell-offs in the first 3 weeks, and then later we saw some renewed interest introducing some uptrend. Now, we also had one of the latest, which is the president also signing the executive order for the oil and gas sector, the upstream for you, how much of appetite can be whet within this movement, and in terms of whether or not we can sustain the renewed interest there?
So, for one, the oil and gas, the sell-offs that we saw in the oil and gas sector is sort of a trickle-down effect of the declining crude oil prices that we're seeing in the global market. So a lot of investors, the sentiment for them was negative, and that's why we saw a lot of sell-offs in the oil and gas space. But in the final week, we saw, Aradale come out and hold an annual
general meeting. Does this still have enough muscle to lead the market?
So they had an annual general meeting and an investor call, and that helped investor sentiment in the final week of May 2025. So going forward, a lot of it would be dependent on how crude oil prices bounce back, and how these tickers are able to respond to that.
And lastly now, when we're looking at where investors should pitch their tent, looking into the crystal ball, where should we put our monies? Your recommendation, buy, hold, sell? I know you're pretty shy around that, but what's your forecast?
For one, it depends on the type of investor, for one. So are you long-term, are you short-term, right? But for now, we think you could pitch your tent in the consumer goods space. I will vote for my guys.
That's always good. Thanks.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time on the show today, Calista. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. That was Calista Chileke, Investment Research Analyst at ARM.